At the crowded Chicago terminal, amidst hurried voices and rolling luggage, a poor girl rushed into the arms of who she thought was her brother. But the embrace wasn't reciprocated because she had made a mistake. And the man who received that unexpected gesture was a lonely billionaire accustomed to being touched only out of interest. He could have pushed her away, but he didn't. And what began in that innocent error would forever change the lives of both. But what happened after that embrace, no one could have predicted. If this story has already touched your heart in these first few moments, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what keeps this space alive. The airport terminal buzzed with activity, a sea of strangers moving beneath bright fluorescent lights and the sound of overhead announcements. Ashley stood frozen in the middle of it all, her hoodie pulled tightly around her, trying to hold back the ache building in her chest. Her hands were clammy and her throat felt dry. She hadn't seen her younger brother, Ryan, in nearly 3 months, and every passing second seemed to drag on forever. She glanced at the arrival screen once again. Flight 227 from Denver landed. Her heart skipped a beat. He was here. Ashley stretched to her toes, straining her neck to peer over the sea of suitcases, backpacks, and tired faces. The air was a mix of coffee, jet fuel, and the familiar scent of fabric softener, like every airport reunion she had ever experienced. Somewhere in the crowd stood the only person who still felt like home, and then she saw him, broad shoulders under a navy hoodie, a black duffel bag slung over his shoulder, standing alone, his eyes scanning the crowd with an unsettling stillness. Ryan, she thought without hesitation. She didn't stop to think. She couldn't. Her heart surged ahead before her mind caught up. She darted through the crowd, dodging a stroller, slipping past a man with headphones, eyes locked on that hoodie. Her chest burned with urgency, her throat tight with anticipation. And then, she was there. Without a second thought, Ashley threw her arms around him from behind, burying her face in his shoulder. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I missed you so much." For a moment he didn't move. No reaction. Then, she felt it. The stiffness beneath her arms. His muscles were wrong. The scent of cologne wasn't familiar. The silence was cold, not warm. Something was wrong. Slowly the man turned in her arms, and that's when she saw it. This wasn't Ryan. This wasn't her brother. Not even close. His face was older, mid-30s maybe. Clean-shaven with a jawline that looked deliberately sculpted. Ice blue eyes locked with hers, surprised but calm. His brows were raised in confusion, but he didn't pull away. Not yet. "Oh my God," Ashley gasped, stumbling back. I'm so sorry. I thought you were someone else, my brother. I was waiting for him. He said he'd be wearing a hoodie, and you just..." Her voice trailed off in a panic. The man didn't look angry, just curious. His lips curved into a soft, amused smile. "That's the nicest mistaken identity I've ever experienced," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "You really thought I was your brother?" Ashley buried her face in her hands. "I didn't even look at your face. I just... Ugh, this is so embarrassing." "Don't be," he said softly. "It was unexpected, but not unpleasant." She peeked between her fingers, blinking rapidly. "I must have looked completely insane." He tilted his head. "No, you looked like someone who needed a hug." That stopped her just for a second. Ashley lowered her hands. There was something in the way he said it. Not flirtatious, not mocking, just honest. The intercom crackled again, announcing a boarding call at gate 14. She jumped slightly. "I should find my actual brother," she muttered, stepping back. "Sorry again, really." He nodded, then asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Ashley." He extended his hand, surprising her once more. "Logan." Their fingers touched briefly, his grip firm, warm, grounding. And then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd with her cheeks still burning. Logan Whitmore stood there for a long moment, processing. He hadn't meant to linger, but something about her voice, the way her arms had wrapped around him without hesitation, without any agenda, it stirred something in him. A door he didn't know was still locked. He turned slowly and walked toward the terminal exit, his driver already waiting. But his mind stayed behind, where her touch still lingered. Meanwhile, Ashley found Ryan 2 terminals down, grinning as he pulled her into a real sibling hug. "Took you long enough, sis." But even as she laughed and squeezed him tight, the feeling from earlier of hugging a stranger and of being seen refused to leave her. The next morning at the cafe, she tried to shake it off. The machines hissed, customers barked orders, and her manager was already in a bad mood. She dropped a coffee filter and spilled a cup of cream, earning a glare from Linda behind the counter. Still, her mind wasn't on the cafe. It was back at the terminal, back in that brief moment of warmth that wasn't even hers. What a ridiculous mistake, she thought again and again. But when the cafe bell chimed, her breath caught. There he was, same quiet posture, tailored charcoal coat, sunglasses in hand. Logan Whitmore, walking straight toward the counter, straight to her. "Coffee. Black?" he said with a smile. "And if you're the one making it, even better." Ashley froze, blinked. Then she smiled back, small, unsure, but real. Something was beginning. She just didn't know what it was. Yet, Logan Whitmore was not the type of man to dwell on accidents. He didn't believe in fate, signs from the universe, or spontaneous encounters leading to anything beyond distraction. His world was one of forecasts, boardroom projections, and market trends. Everything in his life had a purpose and a price. But that morning, sitting in the back of his sleek black car, gliding through downtown Chicago, Logan found himself watching people through the tinted windows with an uncharacteristic detachment. Suits rushed by, vendors set up their stalls, pedestrians moved in well-practiced patterns. He saw them all, but his mind was somewhere else. With her. Ashley. The girl who had flung her arms around him like her life depended on it. The girl who had whispered a name, not his, with such emotion that his whole body had gone still. The girl who had mistaken him for someone else, and yet, in that single moment, had made him feel more seen than he had in years. Logan ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, breaking his usual composure. He hadn't meant to think about her. But the memory wouldn't leave him. The warmth of her arms, the rawness in her voice, the way she had looked up at him, wide-eyed, vulnerable, mortified, and still hadn't run away. There had been no recognition in her gaze, no flicker of, "Oh, you're that Logan Whitmore." She had seen a man, not a name on a magazine cover or a portfolio, and that in itself was rare. "Sir?" his driver asked from the front. "Heading to the Whitmore building?" Logan didn't respond right away. He stared ahead, his fingers drumming absently against the leather armrest. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he spoke. "Take me to the airport." The driver blinked. "O'Hare?" "Yes." "Terminal 2, the cafe by the escalators." "You have a meeting there?" Logan's gaze remained distant. "Something like that." Ashley wiped down the counter with robotic precision, the scent of espresso and disinfectant filling the air. Her eyes were tired, and her back ached from bending over too long. The early shift always hit harder on weekends. Her manager, Linda, barked something about keeping the pastry case full, but Ashley barely heard it. Her mind was still at the terminal, still wrapped around that moment, that stranger, that accident. She had hugged the wrong man, a total stranger. And he hadn't yelled, hadn't mocked her, hadn't even backed away. He had spoken to her like she mattered, like her mistake hadn't been an embarrassment, but something human. She couldn't stop thinking about his eyes, that glacier blue. The way his voice had wrapped around her name like silk. Logan. That was his name, just Logan. And that should have been the end of it. Except it wasn't. Because at 8:03 a.m., the bell over the cafe door chimed, and there he was. Ashley froze. He wasn't in a hoodie this time. He wore a dark coat, sleek and fitted, with a cashmere scarf casually draped around his neck. His steps were calm, intentional. But his eyes, they were already looking for her. And when they found her, it was like something clicked. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and low. Ashley blinked. "You came back." "I did," Logan replied, almost amused by her disbelief. "I figured the least I could do was return the best hug I've ever received. She flushed instantly, her hand tightening around the towel she'd been using. I'm still mortified about that. Don't be, he said gently. It was the most honest thing that's happened to me in years. There was a pause. A tension neither of them understood yet. Ashley swallowed hard, then gestured toward the counter. Coffee? Black, please, and only if you're the one making it. She turned, reaching for the cup with fingers that trembled more than she wanted to admit. Behind her, Melissa was pretending not to stare from the back, eyes wide as saucers. Ashley handed him the coffee. On the house. Logan raised a brow. You sure? I still owe you an apology. You gave it already, he said. I'm here for something else now. Her eyes met his. And what's that? He tilted his head slightly. To see if you're real. Ashley didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to this. Not the charm, not the softness, and certainly not the attention of a man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms and penthouses. What do you do? She asked, more to change the subject than out of curiosity. Logan smiled, sipping his coffee. Let's just say I've made a habit of fixing broken things. And what about people? That, he said with a pause, is harder, but not impossible. He returned the next day, and the next, always in the morning, always asking for her by name. Some days they talked about trivial things, the best donuts in town, the weather, the annoying woman who always asked for half-foam oat milk. Other times the conversations went deeper. Ashley told him about Ryan, how she'd raised him since he was 9, how they'd lost their parents in a car accident, how she'd shelved her own dreams to keep him in school. Logan listened, not just politely, but fully, as if her words carried weight. And he shared too. Not everything, but glimpses. He told her he hated the press, that money wasn't what people thought it was, that sometimes being at the top meant there was no one left to talk to. I don't even know what your company does, she said once, half laughing. Good, Logan replied. That's refreshing. A week passed. One afternoon, as she wiped down his usual table after he'd left, Ashley noticed something tucked under his empty coffee cup. A note. Some people meet in boardrooms, others by accident. I prefer the second kind. L. She stared at it, heart racing. She should have felt confused, maybe flattered, maybe cautious, but what she felt was dangerous. She felt seen, and that scared her more than anything. Ashley didn't mean to notice how different the cafe felt every time Logan walked in, but she couldn't help it. It wasn't just the curious glances from her co-workers or the sudden hush that would settle over the register line. It wasn't even the way her own heartbeat seemed to race. It was something harder to explain, like the atmosphere itself shifted just to make room for him. And despite his quiet demeanor, Logan somehow filled the space completely. He never came with an entourage, never spoke loudly, and never checked his phone mid-conversation. But there was something about Logan that made even the air feel sharper, more aware. And yet, he never acted like he was above any of it. He stood in line like everyone else. He greeted the janitor. He remembered Melissa's name and once asked her about her cat, when he overheard her complaining it was sick. He even offered to help a crying tourist find her gate when the staff was overwhelmed. To Ashley, that was the most disarming thing of all. She'd expected arrogance, distance, cold professionalism. Instead, she got human. It was disorienting. Every day, Logan sat at his usual table by the window, ordering the same black coffee, occasionally adding a blueberry muffin which he rarely touched. Ashley once caught him just staring at it for 10 minutes, as though it held some secret. When she asked why he kept ordering it, he shrugged and said, "Habit and hope." Hope for what? That one day I'll be hungry for something that isn't work. She hadn't known how to respond to that, so she'd just brought him a warm muffin, fresh out of the oven, and changed the subject. Ashley wasn't blind to the way her co-workers reacted to him. Some were curious, others skeptical. Linda, the manager, was clearly uncomfortable with how often Logan came in and how directly he spoke to Ashley. "You're not leading him on, are you?" Linda asked one afternoon while counting tips. Ashley blinked in surprise. "What? No, he's just friendly." "He's not just anything," Linda muttered. "Guys like that don't hang around girls like us unless they want something." The word stung. Ashley didn't answer. She knew how it looked, knew how unlikely it was that someone like Logan, rich, powerful, untouchable, would keep showing up just to talk to her. But that was the thing. He never crossed any lines. He never flirted in that practiced, smirking way she'd grown used to deflecting. He just showed up, asked questions, listened, and slowly she found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. One slow Tuesday morning, Logan sat across from her during her 10-minute break. She sipped her free coffee while he leaned forward, elbows on the table, his coat draped over the chair beside him. "What did you want to be?" he asked softly. Ashley frowned. "When I was a kid." "No. When you still believed it was possible." The question caught her off guard. She stirred her coffee slowly. "A chef," she said after a moment. "I used to cook for my parents. Nothing fancy. Mac and cheese, grilled cheese, you know. But I loved it. I used to dream about opening a small place one day. Warm lighting, wooden tables, a handwritten menu that changed every season." Logan was silent, just watching her. She smiled faintly. "But dreams don't pay hospital bills, or rent, or textbooks. So I stopped dreaming." He didn't look away. "That's the tragedy of being practical." She looked up, surprised. "What? You become very good at surviving and forget how to live." Ashley's chest tightened. He wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud felt like someone had reached inside her and tapped on something she thought had been long buried. One evening, just before closing, a group of businessmen walked into the cafe, loud, arrogant, overdressed. Ashley greeted them with her usual professionalism, but one of them looked at her up and down and smirked. "You're prettier than I expected for a barista," he said, like it was a compliment. Before she could respond, Logan appeared beside her. "Gentlemen," he said, his tone polite but icy, "you're standing in my coffee shop." The men blinked, confused. One of them laughed. "Yours?" Logan didn't smile. "Figuratively speaking, but feel free to leave if you don't know how to speak to people with respect." The silence was immediate. The man who'd made the comment stammered an apology. Ashley didn't say a word, just watched as Logan returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. Later, she brought him a second coffee, on the house again. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "But you shouldn't have to fight every day just to be treated like a person." Ashley sat down across from him. Her break had already ended, but she didn't care. "Why are you really here, Logan?" she asked quietly. "You could go to any cafe in this city. Why this one?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because here, I don't feel like I have to pretend." She swallowed hard. And suddenly the line between their worlds, billionaire and barista, suit and apron, felt less like a wall and more like a thread. Fragile, unexpected, real. Neither of them said anything more, but that silence said everything. And yet, beneath it all, Ashley couldn't ignore the question building in her chest. How long could something this fragile really last? The moment the elevator doors closed behind her, Ashley felt her breath catch. She stood at the heart of Logan Whitmore's world, a penthouse soaring high above the city, encased in silence and glass. The living room stretched out in front of her, elegant and endless, with sleek furniture arranged like no one had ever actually sat there. It was the kind of place that belonged in a magazine, not in a life, not her life. She took a cautious step forward. The floors gleamed beneath her worn sneakers. Sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows over a white leather couch, a grand piano in the corner, and an abstract painting she couldn't even begin to understand. The city below moved like a dream. Cars, people, chaos. But up here, time seemed suspended. Ashley wrapped her arms around herself. It was beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Logan stepped into the room behind her, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. For the first time, he looked a little less like a billionaire and more like a man arriving home to something, or someone, he didn't quite understand. "I had the fridge stocked with what you might need," he said quietly, "but let me know if something's missing." Ashley nodded, still trying to absorb everything. The kitchen was pristine, stark, cold. The marble counters gleamed. Chrome fixtures sparkled. Every cabinet door closed with a soft sigh, as if even the drawers had been trained to behave. She opened the fridge. Imported cheeses, delicate herbs, truffle oil. She exhaled softly. This kitchen looks like it's never been used. That's because it hasn't, Logan said from behind her. Ashley turned. Ever? He shrugged. I eat out, or someone brings it in. I've never had much use for it. She shook her head. That's criminal. Logan smiled faintly. Well, that's why you're here. The first morning was quiet. Ashley woke early, made breakfast, soft scrambled eggs with chives, toast with homemade cinnamon butter, and strong black coffee. She plated it carefully, trying to make it look like it belonged in a space this clean, this intentional. But the kitchen still felt like someone else's stage. When Logan walked in, barefoot, hair damp from the shower, Ashley caught herself staring. He looked softer somehow, less polished. He sat at the island, sipped the coffee, and took a bite, then another. He didn't speak, just ate. And Ashley watched, nervous, until he finally looked up and said, "No chef has ever made eggs this perfect." She blinked. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." He kept eating, silent again. But Ashley could see the change, the tension in his shoulders easing, his jaw unclenching slightly. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the presence. By the second day, she'd found her rhythm. She played soft music as she prepped, let her hair down and hummed to herself while chopping vegetables. Logan, in turn, began spending more time in the kitchen, not asking questions, just sitting nearby, flipping through a newspaper or making notes in a leather-bound journal. Once he even offered to peel carrots. He was terrible at it. Ashley teased him until he laughed, a real laugh that echoed across the polished floors like something rare and long forgotten. "You're not used to being bad at things, are you?" she asked, grinning. "Not particularly." "Well, good. You need the humility." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Is this part of the culinary experience?" She smirked. "It is now." The apartment slowly began to shift. Not in structure, but in feeling. Ashley started leaving little things behind. A sweater on the chair, a sticky note on the fridge with the next day's menu, a half-finished cup of tea near the window. The space absorbed her presence quietly, like the morning light absorbed the skyline. She hadn't meant to leave those traces, but part of her needed to, because part of her still didn't believe it was real. She wasn't just cooking anymore. She was building something, a routine, a connection, a strange unspoken dance between two people from different worlds, learning the same language without words. On the fourth night, Logan invited her to eat with him. They sat at the massive dining table, too large for two but made intimate by candlelight and the soft clinking of forks. He'd opened a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce. They talked about nothing and everything, favorite childhood movies, her first attempt at making risotto, the time his father made him recite investor reports at age 12. It was both surreal and painfully human. After dessert, Ashley began gathering the plates, but Logan reached across the table, stopping her. "Let it sit," he said gently. "Stay." She hesitated, and then she did. They sat in silence for a moment, the city lights flickering beneath them. "I used to think I had everything," Logan said finally, "until I realized I didn't even know what having something felt like." Ashley looked at him, her heart aching. "You can't buy what matters," she said. He nodded. And in that stillness, that suspended second where nothing moved, something shifted. Something inside both of them cracked open just enough to let something else in. That night, in the guest room, Ashley lay in the plush bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything was too soft, too silent, too clean. She missed the hum of her old fridge, the sound of Ryan's laughter echoing from the hallway, the creak of the floorboards outside her door, and yet she didn't feel like leaving. Not yet. She reached for the framed photo of her and Ryan beside the lamp, held it close, whispered, "This is for you," then closed her eyes. But sleep didn't come easily, because in the quiet, she could still hear Logan's voice, low and honest. "I didn't know what having something felt like." And now, neither did she. By the fifth morning, Ashley no longer needed to ask where anything was. She moved through the penthouse kitchen as if she belonged there, barefoot and wrapped in one of Logan's oversized linen robes after spilling juice on her sweater. The robe still smelled faintly of him, clean, musky and warm, and for some reason she hadn't taken it off since. She hummed while whisking eggs, the scent of basil and sautéed mushrooms filling the air. The windows were open, letting in a breeze that stirred the curtains and played with the hem of her robe. It should have felt like someone else's life, this sky-high kitchen, this peace, but something inside her was softening to it. And then she heard his voice. "Are you singing Elvis?" Ashley turned, caught mid-hum. "Maybe." Logan, still in his t-shirt and pajama pants, leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "My mother used to play that exact song when she was making breakfast." Ashley raised an eyebrow. "Should I stop?" He shook his head. "No. It's nice." He moved toward the counter and sat at his usual stool, elbows resting on the island, eyes following her like they often did now, curious, quiet, open. They had settled into an unspoken rhythm, her cooking, him watching, sharing long conversations over simple meals. But something had shifted in recent days. The silences between them had grown more meaningful, not heavy, just full, like two people who didn't need to explain everything anymore, because the understanding had already begun. She placed the plate in front of him. "You always stare like that," she said, gently teasing. "I don't mean to," he replied. "Then why do you?" Logan looked down at his plate, thoughtful. "Because I'm trying to memorize what this feels like, in case it disappears." Ashley didn't answer. There were things between them now that neither dared say, things growing in the quiet. She poured coffee into his cup and sat across from him. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. He looked at her. No mask, no filters. All the time. Ashley nodded slowly. "Me too." For a long moment they just sat like that, hands close but not touching, steam rising between them. Later that day, Logan asked if she wanted to see the rest of the penthouse. She agreed, unsure why her stomach fluttered. He led her down a wide hallway, so quiet it amplified every footstep. There were rooms she hadn't dared explore, a library with dark wood shelves, a home office she imagined he barely used, a media room with a massive screen that looked untouched. Then he paused at a door she hadn't noticed before. He hesitated. "This one's not finished," he said. She tilted her head. "What is it?" "My mother's studio," he murmured. "It used to be hers, before I remodeled." He opened the door. The room was empty except for a single easel in the center, draped in a white sheet. Dust coated the corners, and the air smelled like forgotten things. She was an artist, Logan said. Not professionally, just when she still had dreams. Ashley moved quietly, her fingers brushing the fabric covering the easel. "Do you ever paint?" He gave a dry laugh. "No. I finance buildings. I don't create beauty. I buy it." "You don't have to paint to create," she said softly. "Sometimes just allowing space for someone else's light is enough." Logan looked at her for a long time, and something unspoken passed between them. He wasn't used to being seen beyond his empire, and she wasn't used to being seen at all. That night, a storm rolled in over the skyline. Thunder echoed across the glass and rain painted streaks down the windows. Ashley couldn't sleep. She wandered into the living room, wrapped in a blanket, and found Logan already there, barefoot, glass of wine in hand, staring at the city. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "The storm reminds me of when I was a kid." Ashley sat beside him, pulling her knees to her chest. "I used to love storms. Ryan would hide in my bed and we'd pretend we were on a ship at sea." Logan smiled faintly. "I used to hide in my mother's studio." Did she know? She always knew, but she pretended not to. That was her gift. Ashley leaned her head back against the couch. The thunder rolled closer. "Do you miss her?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "She was the only person who didn't want anything from me." Ashley's throat tightened. "And your father?" Logan was silent. Then, "My father believed I was a brand, not a boy. I stopped being his son the day I became an asset." Ashley closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He turned to her. "Why? You didn't cause it." "No. but I understand what it's like to be responsible for people you love, to carry everything and pretend it's light. He stared at her. How do you do it? She met his gaze. I remind myself why I'm doing it, who I'm doing it for. They sat like that, two quiet souls who had learned to survive without asking for help, finally allowing themselves to lean just a little. And for the first time, Ashley reached out. Her hand rested lightly over his, not a gesture of romance, but of understanding, of shared grief, of quiet courage. Logan didn't move. He just let her hand stay. As the storm continued outside and the clock ticked past midnight, Ashley whispered the words that had been building inside her all week. Maybe we're both just trying to remember how to feel safe again. Logan turned his hand under hers, and gently, without a word, he laced their fingers together. Ashley had just finished folding Logan's linen napkins when he appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, holding something behind his back. You've been hiding, he said with a half smile. I've been reorganizing your spice cabinet, she replied, raising an eyebrow, which, by the way, was a tragedy. I'm sure it was, he said, stepping closer, but I came to ask for something slightly more terrifying than cardamom. Ashley leaned back against the counter, suspicious. I'm listening. Logan pulled a slim black envelope from behind his back and held it out to her. She took it, curious. The paper was thick, textured, elegant. She opened it carefully and read the gold-embossed invitation inside. The Whitmore Foundation Annual Gala. Black tie. Friday night. Benefiting children's health initiatives. Her heart skipped. A gala, she said slowly. Like gowns and champagne and judgmental rich people? Yes, Logan finished, half laughing. Ashley blinked. You want me to go to this? I do. Why? He was quiet for a beat, then said, because I want you there. Beside me. She swallowed. Logan. That's not my world. It's not mine either, he replied, softer than she expected. Not the real me. Not the version of me you've been seeing. Ashley looked down at the invitation, the paper heavy in her hands. I don't have a dress for something like this. Or shoes. Or, I've already handled that, he said gently. There's a stylist arriving tomorrow. Everything will be tailored for you. No pressure. But if you want to come, if you're willing, I'd be proud to have you with me. Proud. Not, you'll look good on my arm. Not, it'll make a statement. Proud. That word landed somewhere deep in her chest. Ashley nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm not promising I'll know which fork to use. Then we'll just drink from the bottle, Logan smiled. The next afternoon, a private stylist named Amelia arrived with 3 garment bags and a discreet suitcase full of options. She didn't blink at Ashley's simple apartment clothes or chipped nail polish. Instead, she treated her like royalty, gentle, professional, kind. After trying on 4 dresses, Ashley stepped out in the 5th. It was navy blue, sleek but soft, with delicate straps and a subtle shimmer that caught the light like moonlight on water. It hugged her body in a way that made her feel elegant but not exposed, different, but still herself. When Logan saw her, his breath visibly caught. You're, he began, but didn't finish. Ashley looked down at herself. Too much? He shook his head. Not even close. Their eyes met and stayed. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Logan held out his hand. Ready to be brave? Ashley smiled. Let's find out. The gala was held at a private museum downtown, its glass facade glowing under string lights and soft jazz drifting through the air. As their car pulled up to the valet, Ashley's stomach flipped. Logan reached over and gently squeezed her hand. You don't have to impress anyone, he said. Just breathe. She nodded, but her heart was pounding. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above tall ceilings, and guests in floor-length gowns and tailored tuxedos moved like they belonged to another century. Waiters carried trays of champagne. Photographers clicked discreetly in corners. Conversations were sprinkled with names Ashley had only seen in headlines. She kept close to Logan, her fingers brushing the back of his jacket. He introduced her simply. This is Ashley. No title, no explanation, no performance. And yet, The looks started. Subtle, calculated, smiles that didn't reach eyes. One woman whispered behind a glittering clutch. A man gave Ashley a once-over before offering a tight nod. Even the waitstaff seemed more polished, more rehearsed. Ashley straightened her posture. She wouldn't shrink, but she couldn't deny the burn of discomfort under her skin. Logan led her to a quieter area near the art gallery wing, offering her a glass of champagne. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she lied. He touched her hand gently. "I don't have to be." Ashley looked at him. "They're judging me. They don't know you. They don't want to know me." Logan's jaw tightened. "Then they're not worth knowing." Before she could respond, a voice sliced through the air. "Logan." Ashley turned. A tall, statuesque woman approached in a blood-red gown, hair pinned perfectly, smile sharp as glass. "Samantha," Logan said, neutral. Ashley's stomach dropped. The X. She could feel it without being told. Samantha's eyes flicked to Ashley, then back to Logan. "You brought someone new." Ashley held out her hand politely. "Hi, I'm Ashley." Samantha looked at the hand, then smiled without taking it. How charming. The tension in the air shifted like a storm front. Logan stepped slightly closer to Ashley, his voice calm but protective. "Ashley is important to me." Samantha's eyes glittered. "Of course. You always did enjoy rescuing strays." Ashley felt the words hit like a slap. But before she could react, Logan spoke. "That's enough." His voice was low, firm, and final. Samantha's smile cracked, just barely. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like knives on marble. Ashley stood frozen. Logan turned to her. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize for her," Ashley said, her voice quiet but steady. "No," he said. "But I should have warned you. I didn't realize they'd—" He trailed off. Ashley shook her head. "It's okay. I'm okay." But something inside her had shifted. The room felt smaller now, colder, like a door had been opened, and now couldn't be closed. Later, while Logan gave a brief speech on stage, Ashley stood near the back, clutching her glass, pretending to listen while her thoughts spun. Maybe she wasn't meant for this world. Maybe, no matter how much he made her feel seen, the rest of them never would. And then she heard it. A voice behind her. Two women whispering. "Did you see her shoes?" She probably borrowed everything. He's always had a thing for broken girls. Ashley turned around, but before she could say anything, she caught Logan's eyes from the stage. He was looking straight at her. His voice faltered. And in that pause, she felt something deeper than pity or anger. She felt exposed. Ashley woke the next morning with the taste of regret thick on her tongue. The penthouse was quiet, the kind of silence that came after something had cracked. Outside the massive windows, the city stretched far below, oblivious. But Ashley could feel it, like a storm brewing in her chest. She hadn't slept well, not after the gala, not after the whispers, not after Samantha, and definitely not after the way Logan had looked at her on that stage. With pride, yes, but also with guilt. Guilt for inviting her into a world that had never made space for women like her. When she reached the kitchen, there was already coffee brewing. Logan stood by the counter, sleeves rolled, jaw tense. He turned when he heard her enter. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she answered. There was a pause, a wait between them. Then he slid a tablet across the counter toward her. Ashley looked down and froze. Her own face stared back at her from the screen, blurry, caught mid-blink at the gala, standing beside Logan in her navy dress. But it was the headline that made her stomach turn. "From coffee to champagne. Who is Logan Whitmore's new flame?" She scrolled. There were more. "Waitress turned Cinderella attends billionaire gala. Barista bombshell or gold digger in disguise. Insiders say Whitmore has a soft spot for the strays." Ashley couldn't breathe. Each article was worse than the last. Personal photos scraped from her barely used social media. Her last job listed, even the old diner she'd worked at before the cafe. One piece had even tracked down her apartment building. They called her working class. Ordinary. Questionable. And none of it felt real. She stepped back from the counter. "Why are they writing about me?" she whispered. Logan's voice was low. controlled. Because you were with me. Because they need something to chew on. She turned toward him, her eyes wide, chest tight. You knew this might happen. I thought I could protect you. Ashley stared at him, pain blooming behind her ribs. You should have told me. I didn't think. He cut himself off. I underestimated them. I underestimated us. She was shaking now, not from fear, but from fury, a deep, quiet fury that felt like betrayal. They called me a gold digger, Logan. They don't know you, he said quickly. Anyone who matters, but they're not wrong, she snapped, voice rising. To them, I'm just the girl who makes your coffee and somehow ended up in your penthouse. They see a poor girl getting favors, and they assume. She couldn't finish the sentence. Logan moved toward her. Ashley. She stepped back. I can't do this. His face shifted, just a flicker, but she saw it. You're not alone in this, he said. Let me handle it. You are the storm, Logan, she whispered. You can't protect me from it when it's coming from you. Silence. Thick. Unbearable. She looked around at the apartment. The elegance. The comfort. The lies it made her believe. I wanted to believe this could work, she said, her voice breaking. That maybe people from different worlds could meet somewhere in the middle. But the middle doesn't exist, Logan. Not when the world won't let it. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. I need space, she said, before I disappear completely in you. He didn't argue, didn't plead, just stood there, still. She left the kitchen, walked to the guest room in silence, packed her things, what little she'd brought, and didn't look back when she closed the door behind her. The cab ride home was quiet. Ashley watched the skyline shrink behind her, the towers of glass and power dissolving into the fog of the morning. When she reached her apartment, the hallway smelled like burnt toast and floor cleaner. Familiar. Grounding. But when she stepped inside, it wasn't peace she felt. It was something else. A strange emptiness where something precious had begun to grow. She sat on the edge of her bed, opened her phone and scrolled past dozens of texts from Melissa, Linda, even some she didn't recognize. Most were curious, some cruel, others pretending to be supportive. She turned the phone off. She didn't want to explain herself, she just wanted to forget. The next morning, she returned to the cafe. Heads turned when she entered. Conversations halted mid-sentence. She could feel the heat of their curiosity pressing against her skin. Melissa rushed over. Ashley, are you okay? I mean, that article? I'm fine, Ashley said flatly. She wasn't, but she needed to pretend she was. By noon, someone left a newspaper folded open at the counter. Logan's face on the cover. A quote pulled from some panel he'd spoken on the night before. She flipped it shut without reading. Her hands moved through the motions, grinding coffee, steaming milk, wiping counters, but her mind was far away, stuck between the fantasy she'd lived for a week and the reality that had shattered it. That night, she lay awake in the dark, replaying every moment. The way Logan had looked at her across the table, the way he'd laced his fingers through hers during the storm, the silence after she walked out. She missed him. Not the billionaire, not the penthouse, just him. But missing him didn't change the truth, and the truth was, love wasn't always enough when the world refused to let you hold it quietly. 3 days had passed since Ashley walked away from the penthouse, but it felt like years. The noise around her had quieted. The headlines began to fade, the stares at the cafe softened. But inside, the silence was louder than ever. Logan hadn't called. Not once. And that perhaps hurt the most. She told herself she needed the distance. But every time she passed a window with a skyline view or felt the warmth of her kitchen at home, something inside her echoed his name. She missed the way he listened. She missed the quiet safety of cooking beside him. But above all, she missed the way he made her feel seen, not for what she had, but for who she was. That morning she arrived at the cafe early, craving distraction. The place was half empty, the usual smell of roasted beans and vanilla in the air. Linda handed her a clipboard. Inventory deliveries late again. Can you double-check the supplier list? There's something weird with the invoice address. Ashley nodded, eager for a task. She walked to the back room, sat on a crate of filters, and pulled the invoice file from the delivery folder. She scanned the usual line items, dairy, beans, filters, lids, until her eyes caught on a name printed on the header. Whitmore Distribution Group subsidiary of Whitmore Holdings. Her breath hitched. She checked again. And again. The name didn't change. Whitmore Holdings, Logan's company. She felt a tremor run through her chest, hot and cold at once. Why would Whitmore Holdings be handling regional food distribution? Suddenly restless, Ashley stood and grabbed her phone. A quick search brought her to the homepage of Whitmore Holdings, sleek and corporate. She clicked through subsidiaries, her fingers shaking. There it was. WHTR Food and Logistics, acquired 5 years ago, formerly known as Heartland Distributors. She froze. Heartland. That name she hadn't heard in so long. It used to be printed on the side of trucks that delivered ingredients to her family's restaurant, back when her father was alive, before everything fell apart. A chill settled in her spine. Hands trembling, she dug through a folder of old photos and receipts her mother had kept, tucked in a drawer beneath the coffee station. She found the last invoice before the restaurant closed. Heartland Distributors. A late fee. A price spike. That was the final month before they'd defaulted. She sank to the floor. It couldn't be coincidence. Ashley's heart pounded in her ears. Her family's restaurant, her father's dream, her mother's pride, had folded under mounting supply costs they could no longer afford. Costs driven in part by corporate restructuring, by mergers, by aggressive acquisitions, by Logan's company. She sat there silent, her back against the cold metal shelf. Suddenly, the quiet between them wasn't just space. It was betrayal. Later that night, Ashley stood outside Logan's building. She hadn't planned on coming, but her feet had brought her there before her heart could protest. The doorman recognized her but hesitated. "Mr. Whitmore is upstairs. Shall I let him know?" She shook her head. "No, I'll go up." The elevator ride felt infinite. When the doors opened, she stepped into the familiar stillness of his penthouse. The smell of citrus cleaner, the hum of a jazz record playing low in the background. Logan appeared from the hallway barefoot in a charcoal sweater. "Ashley," he breathed. She held up the folder of documents. "I found the invoices," she said, her voice brittle. "From the restaurant, from the distributor your company bought." Logan's expression shifted instantly. "Ashley, wait. You knew?" "No," he said quickly. "I didn't. I swear to you. I didn't know until right now what you're saying. That Heartland was one of ours." "You never asked," she cut in. "Never looked. Never thought about what your business decisions cost people like my family." "I wasn't in charge of that division," Logan said, stepping closer. "I didn't touch the food logistics side. But your name was on it," she snapped. "Your name was the one printed on every door that delivered the final blow to my parents' dream. Your empire crushed us, and you never even noticed." Silence fell. A heavy, shaking silence. Logan looked at her, eyes filled with something he rarely showed. "Shame. I'm sorry," he whispered. "I would have undone it if I'd known." "That's the problem," she said, her voice cracking. "You have the power to break people without even knowing their names." Tears stung her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I trusted you, Logan. I let you into my world, and now I realize you destroyed it before you ever walked in." He stepped toward her, slow, cautious. "Please, let me make this right." She stepped back. "I don't think you can." And with that, she turned and walked out. Again, but this time something inside her didn't just ache. It shattered. The days that followed were heavy. Ashley moved through them like a shadow of herself, quiet, mechanical, distracted. She returned to the cafe, but her hands didn't move with the same rhythm. The coffee never quite frothed right. Her laughter, once spontaneous, had vanished. Something had been torn open inside her, and she didn't know how to close it. She hadn't spoken to Logan since the night she confronted him, and he hadn't tried to call. Part of her was angry at that. The other part understood. What could he say? There were things a simple apology couldn't fix. Her family's restaurant wasn't just a business. It was memory, smell, touch. Her childhood, her parents' late-night whispers over recipes, the laughter of a full dining room. Gone. and knowing the man she had grown to trust, maybe even love, had unknowingly helped destroy it. That grief was different. It was deeper. Ashley spent most of her free time at home, avoiding the world. The couch became her new refuge, the silence less intimidating than it used to be. She flipped through old photos one evening, her mother kneading dough with flour on her nose, her father carving roast beside the front window of their restaurant, Ryan sitting on the counter with chocolate all over his face. Her chest tightened. The photo had a date stamped in the corner, 2 weeks before everything fell apart, and all she could think was, what if we had made it through that one storm? Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. An unknown number. You have a delivery at the cafe. Please come when you can. That was all. She hesitated, then grabbed her coat. When she arrived, the cafe was nearly closed. Linda looked up, surprised. Hey, someone left this for you. Wouldn't say who they were, just said you'd know. Ashley spotted it on the counter, a large envelope. No name, just one word handwritten across the front. Ashley. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a deed, official, stamped, signed, and attached to it, an old photo, her family's restaurant. The windows boarded up, faded signs still barely visible, but something new was scrawled across the bottom corner. Reopening soon. Ashley stared, heart pounding. She turned the deed over. Her name was printed clearly on the ownership line, not Logan's, not Whitmore Holdings, hers. And beneath it, in soft black ink, was a handwritten note. You once said the restaurant was your family's heart. I don't want to own your heart. I just want to give it back. Logan Ashley sat down, hard. The world around her blurred. Her breath came in shallow waves, and for a moment, all she could do was press the paper to her chest like it might disappear. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't even imagined this. But he'd done it. Not as a plea, not as a bribe, just as an act of redemption. Later that night, Ashley walked to the old restaurant. It was just as she remembered. The front windows dusty, the bricks worn. But something in the air was different. The lock had been changed. Inside, she could see the outlines of new fixtures, new lights, a fresh coat of paint waiting to dry. The space wasn't finished yet, but it had life again. She stepped closer to the window, placed her hand against the glass, and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she imagined laughter inside those walls again, smells of garlic and rosemary, the sound of Ryan setting the tables, her mother humming by the stove, her father tapping his wedding ring against the counter, a habit he never dropped. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they weren't just grief this time. They were gratitude, because Logan hadn't just bought a building. He'd returned something stolen, something that mattered more than money or pride. He'd seen what needed healing, and stepped back, so she could own it. That same night, she found her fingers dialing his number. She didn't think, she just needed to. It rang once, twice, and then his voice. Not a voicemail. Him. Ashley, he said softly. She didn't speak at first. Her throat thickened. I saw what you did, she whispered. Silence. Then his voice, low and uncertain. Too much? No, she said. It's exactly what I didn't know I needed. A pause, a breath. Thank you. Logan was quiet on the other end. Then, you don't owe me anything. I know, she said. That's why it matters. Another pause. Then gently, can I see you? Ashley looked out the window at the city, and for the first time in days her heart didn't ache. It beat, quietly but clearly. I think I want that, she said. Soon. And even though she couldn't see him, she knew he was smiling. Ashley hadn't planned on seeing him that day. She'd woken early, unable to sleep, her mind still filled with the image of the restaurant, her restaurant, waiting patiently to come alive again. She'd spent the morning there alone, walking between the unfinished walls, touching every surface like it was sacred. But around noon, as she stood by the window, sunlight casting long streaks across the dusty floor, she saw a familiar figure approaching from across the street. Logan. No suit, no bodyguards, just him. He didn't carry flowers or make a dramatic gesture. He simply walked to the door, paused for a second, waiting to be allowed in, and then stepped through when she nodded. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything between them pressing into the space like a third presence. He looked around slowly. "I remember this place," he said softly. "From the photo. And from how you talked about it." Ashley nodded, watching him. "It's still not finished," she murmured. Logan turned toward her. "Neither are we." The words hung between them, raw, honest, a little broken. Ashley felt her chest tighten. "I was so angry," she said, voice low. "It's not just at you, at the whole world, at how fast everything was taken from us. You had every right to be. I blamed you for all of it." "I blame myself too," he replied, his voice quiet. "Still do." Ashley stepped closer, just enough to see the weariness in his eyes. "You didn't have to give it back." "I know, but you did." He nodded. "Because you matter more than my pride." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Ashley did something she hadn't done in weeks. She reached out and took his hand, and this time he held on. Later that afternoon, they sat on the floor in the back of the restaurant, sharing a sandwich Ashley had brought from the cafe. It felt ridiculous, sitting cross-legged on concrete with a billionaire, splitting a turkey and cheese on wheat. But it was real, unpolished, safe. Logan took a bite, then wiped mustard from the corner of his mouth. "You know, this is better than most of the food I've had catered." Ashley laughed. "That's because it wasn't engineered by a team of food stylists. No, just someone who cooks with soul." She rolled her eyes. "Flatter me again, and I'll make you do dishes." He grinned, gladly. The air between them had softened. Not erased, not perfect, but mended, bit by bit. Ashley leaned back on her palms. "Ryan's doing better." Logan turned toward her. "Yeah?" "Yeah. His new doctor said the treatment's working. He's stronger. He even started sketching again." Logan smiled. "That's good. I always liked him." "He liked you too," she said, quieter now. "Even after everything." Logan was silent for a moment, then looked at her, really looked at her. "You're not the same girl I met at the airport." Ashley tilted her head. "You're not the same man." He nodded. "You made me want to be better," she swallowed, "and you made me believe I still deserved more." The wind rustled against the boarded windows. Sunlight shifted across the dusty floor. And in that silence, Logan reached forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Ashley didn't move. His hand found her cheek, warm, steady. And then, finally, with no more pain between them, no expectations, he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, deliberate, and deep in a way that made her toes curl inside her shoes. His lips were soft but certain, and the moment their mouths met, it felt like exhaling after holding breath for far too long. When they pulled apart, Ashley rested her forehead against his, eyes closed, breathing steady. "I've been wanting to do that," he whispered. "I know," she said. "Me too." They stayed like that, forehead to forehead, silence pressing gently against their skin, until her phone vibrated between them. She reached for it, glanced at the screen. Her brother. The message was short. "Doctor says I'll need surgery next week. Covered, right?" She looked up at Logan. He was already nodding. You won't have to worry," he said softly. Ashley nodded slowly, tears rising. Not from panic this time, but from relief. From being seen. From not being alone. And in that moment, something shifted inside her for good. She no longer saw Logan as the man who once lived in a world she couldn't reach. He was simply the man who had chosen her, and she was finally ready to choose him back. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Logan brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "So when do we open?" Ashley smiled. "Soon, very soon." But she wasn't just talking about the restaurant, she was talking about her heart, and for the first time, she was ready to let him in. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the air. Ashley stood in the kitchen of the newly reopened restaurant, her apron dusted with flour, her hair pulled into a loose bun. The counters gleamed, the ovens purred, and sunlight streamed through the freshly cleaned windows. Every surface felt familiar but new, like home restored. Outside, the dining room buzzed with life. Tables were full. Laughter bounced off the walls. Soft music played in the background, not too loud, just enough to make the place feel like it had a heartbeat. Ashley peeked out from behind the counter. Linda and Melissa were seated near the window, beaming with pride. Several regulars from the cafe had shown up, curious to see what she'd built. A few investors were seated near the back. Ryan was near the register, dressed in a crisp button-up, taking orders like he was born to do it. He caught her looking and gave her a thumbs up. Ashley smiled through the tears that pricked at her eyes. She had imagined this day 1,000 times, but never like this. Not with Logan sitting at the farthest table, in jeans and a navy shirt, watching her with a kind of reverence she still didn't know how to carry. Not with her heart this full. Not with this kind of peace. The restaurant was called Mend. It had been her idea one late evening weeks ago, while they were sitting on the restaurant floor eating takeout. "It's what this place is," she had said. "It's not about food, it's about healing, rebuilding, starting over." And Logan had nodded without hesitation. Then that's the name. He hadn't argued. He hadn't corrected her. He had just said yes, like he did every time she needed him to simply listen. The soft chime of the front door broke her thoughts. A couple entered, then two more. She turned back to the stove and plated the next dish. Lemon herb chicken, garlic butter green beans, and her signature potato gratin. When Logan's plate was ready, she brought it out herself. "Chef's special," she said, placing it in front of him. He looked up at her like she was the only person in the room. "Will the chef join me?" She slid into the chair across from him, breathless from the rush, her cheeks flushed. "How are we doing?" she asked, glancing around. He took her hand. "You're doing more than running a restaurant, you're running a dream." Ashley's throat tightened. "I didn't do it alone." "No," Logan said, "but you made it mean something." They sat there in silence for a while, hands entwined on the table, letting the hum of the room speak for them. Then Logan shifted slightly, reached into his coat pocket. "I didn't plan to do this today," he said. Ashley blinked. "Do what?" But he was already standing. He didn't kneel, didn't make a speech. He simply placed a small velvet box on the table and opened it. Inside was a ring, delicate, elegant, a single stone, set in a silver band. Nothing flashy, just real. "I don't want another day to go by without you knowing I choose you," he said, voice quiet and steady. "Not because you fit into my world, or I fit into yours, but because together we created something neither of us had before." Ashley stared at the ring, then at him, then back at the ring. The room had quieted. Ryan stood still behind the counter, watching, his eyes wide. Ashley stood slowly, her hands trembling. "You're serious?" she whispered. "I've never been more." Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She didn't need to think, didn't need to ask what tomorrow would look like. She just knew this was the man who had stood beside her while she rebuilt everything, and asked for nothing but her presence in return. She stepped closer and whispered, "Yes." Logan's shoulders dropped like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. He slipped the ring on her finger. No applause, no spotlight, just quiet joy. And then he kissed her, a kiss full of memory, of second chances, of love that wasn't loud, but true. That night, when the last guest had left and the lights were dimmed, Ashley stood in the middle of the dining room, barefoot on the warm wood floors, holding Logan's hand in one and Ryan's in the other. The world outside still spun, still judged, still shouted. But inside this space they had found something sacred, something healed, something that could finally begin again. She didn't become a millionaire, and she didn't need to stop being who she was. All Ashley did was open her arms, first by mistake, then by love, and allow someone to truly see her. And Logan, with all the money in the world, discovered that his greatest treasure wasn't what he owned, but who was willing to stand by his side when the world closed all its doors. Because sometimes a simple hug can be the beginning of everything the heart never had the courage to ask for. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what allows us to keep bringing stories like this.